Hello guys and welcome to another patch note breakdown. My name is Daedalus, I'm joined by Counterfeit, and today we're gonna have a look at patch 8.24. Fortunately for us, we have the best of both worlds. We have Counterfeit, who doesn't know what he's doing, but I've seen the patch notes before, and me, who, well, ultimately doesn't know what he's doing as well, and I haven't seen the patch notes before. So, fortunately for me, I have someone with me who has done a bit of research. I think.
We got there eventually. Yeah. Well, I mean, I personally looked a bit through Foxdrop Freak and Scara's notes this time around to get a little bit more insight than we would have otherwise. But hopefully, Daedalus, your inherent big Danish brain will be enough to spot some extra stuff. Because I know this is coming out a little bit later than usual for a patch notes review. So hopefully, we've got a little bit of experience as well playing on the patch to be able to evaluate these changes a little bit more coherently.
Yeah. Well, first up, Counterfeit, we do have Nico. So, have you played a bit of Nico?
I haven't played with her, but I've played against her, and she seems to be extremely strong. Her ultimate is seems very, very overloaded.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to remember exactly everything it does.
So, if I remember correctly, her old damages, it gives her a shield and it snares, right?
Yes. So she shields herself for X seconds, which more for every enemy champion nearby. I think leaps into the air. I don't think. Yes.
So
I
she's
think
untargetable as well.
I don't think so, but I think basically the leap into the air is actually a slow. So she shields herself, slows, then does magic damage, then stuns. And also if she's disguised, she is disguised. Then she doesn't. Then you don't get any. We barely get any warning of it happening before it goes off.
Okay.
And also, it's got 130% AP scaling. So
130.
So yeah. So when she's playing AP mid, she beats the crap out of you because I'm pretty sure they gave her that scaling, assuming she wouldn't have very much AP for some reason.
What?
She will annihilate whole teams at a time. It's very silly.
Yeah, that sounds ridiculous. And like her ult is like a mixture of a 6 ult and a bard ult, right?
Yeah.
In some sense, because you get like the AoE damage from the 6 ult, and you get the stun from the bard ult.
Yes, I suppose probably the closest equivalent I come if anyone watching this hasn't for some reason played Nico, is it's something like a grand entrance from Rakan, but that also kills everybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right.
Kind
it's just a bunch of AoEs that make everyone dead and / crowd control or / crowd control then dead.
You know what I also think is ridiculous about Nico? It's her setup where her E the stun and then the Q. That the Q does multiple like procs of damage if it hits an enemy champion. That's super overpowered as well.
It does. I kind of like the idea of this. So that's the blooming burst, which is will go off multiple times if they stay still. So the best use scenario for it, which is that they take all 3 hits, is so different. Like literally, it's almost like like a really empowered auto attack at that point. In terms of like the difference between someone taking 1 blooming burst and taking 3, is literally 3 times as much damage. Like they don't drop off in damage at all. It's literally just like if you can get CC by say someone else to make it easier for her, then she just beats the crap out of you. It's got 50% AP scaling, so it's not quite as objectionable, but it's still a whole lot of damage. Oh, also a small note on her ultimate Pop Blossom. If she Zhonya's while she's up in the air, it doesn't cancel it. Just a point of reference, point of order.
Oh god, she has too many tools to play around with, man.
Yeah, so counterplay just isn't a thing when she's got Zhonya's. So you're just like, oh well, guess I'm just gonna die.
It's like the obscurity with Akali, where there's just no counterplay at all.
Yeah.
She has everything that you could want from a mid laner, and she has a lot of damage from all of her abilities as well. I can imagine. I haven't seen too much of her yet, but I can imagine if you go Luna's Echo into Morel Nomicon, then you get that magic pen, and you have the poke from the Dune's Echo. You have health as well. So you could actually go deep with your disguises too. I can imagine that would be a hard hitting combo.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have a quick look on Pro Builds to check what people are building on her, but yeah, pretty much that. Like, most people are building Ludens and then just a bunch of AP. I genuinely think that Nico is a stealth LeBlanc rework.
Yeah.
Like, it's in they didn't want to get rid of LeBlanc entirely, but they wanted to try and go more on the whole LeBlanc deceiver aspect. And I think this is basically what she is. But I mean, other people have said she's also very similar to other champions, so I don't know. But she might, if she gets some of the bite taken out of her, so she's more. She probably doesn't need to have loads of utility and also do loads of damage. I don't know. There's me.
Yeah, I agree. It's like it's the same problem you have with, let's say, Victor, right? He doesn't have a lot of utility. He doesn't have a lot of mobility, but that guy does a lot of damage once he reaches the late game. For Nico, she has damage once she reaches her first item, and she still has utility and mobility, and well, the disguises can help her set up plays.
Yeah, I do love the disguise mechanic. I think it's really interesting, and it opens up. I mean, even in the champion spotlight, which they did very well to cut down to 3 minutes, unlike us who will probably be running on forever. But if you watch the champion spotlight, they show some incredible stuff you can do with her, and people seem to be picking up quite quickly as well. So I think it's a really cool idea for a champion, which just opens up avenues of play that just would not be possible with any other champion in the game, which I think is a very good thing.
Well, I'm looking forward to casting her, and I think you guys are casting her in the ESL Meisterschaft next week, right? Or is she not allowed?
I'm not sure as of yet, but she will have been out for a while at that point. So usually it's if it's a weekend coming up or it's just a sort of a week difference. And I think this is going to be by the time it comes around like a couple of weeks. So I would be surprised if she was banned. Yeah, which means probably yes, she's either pick or banned just because she seems to be very strong.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to casting her, but let's move on to our next subject. So that's Aatrox, and his Q no longer deals bonus damage to monsters, meaning that I guess he's harder to jungle with. But then again, looking at the Q, it's what, like an additional .1 attack damage. It's not a lot.
Well, it's I believe it's a bit weirdly worded. I think it's a 0.1 attack damage ratio, so it's not like but yeah,
but even right. Leaving a ratio isn't a lot when we're talking 0.1.
No, I don't know what it is in real terms in terms of if this actually stops them from just doing that still, because it's like I don't know. Let's have a quick look on. This is where we should have done a bit more research ahead of time.
Well, if let's say you have 10 attack damage, that's what .1 attack damage you can get extra. If we're talking as a ratio, right? So that's 1 attack damage extra you get to monsters. That's not a lot.
Yeah. Yes. So yes, if you had a 1 attack damage ratio, you'd be at 100. So like an initial hit. Let's see what is. So at level 1, he has 60 attack damage. So it would be 6
extra 80.
Which on AoE probably is going to add up to a fair chunk, especially considering that the Darkened Blade is going to be doing multiple AoEs. So maybe that slows him down a little bit, but I don't think that stops him from jungling. I think it just means it's a little less good.
Yeah, I see the point you're making. But still, like I think mainly it is for the early game. But then again, I haven't seen any Aatrox jungle really, so I don't see where this is coming from.
It does happen, just not enormously frequently.
Yeah. Well, if you look at OPGG, then like, where does he even place in like the jungle ladder? He's the 31's most picked champion in the jungle.
Yeah, I don't think he's like common by any means, but I think this will probably push him out of the jungle where he was already. But I don't know, like. Yeah, it's not a big thing.
Okay, well, reading the actual patch notes, they're saying that mid Aatrox is using it in tandem with Smite to create a lead his opponent have no real way to punish.
Yes, this is what Ibra has been talking about from the Korean side of things, that we haven't seen it turn up in competition that much ourselves, but or at least it was, and it possibly still is, actually a very viable thing, but no one really has been using it in the games we've been casting.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, do you have more to add to that?
No, that's pretty much it.
It does make sense to remove it as a way for right side to stop him from going to mid lane to which might. Does feel bad for the jungle Aatrox though.
To be honest, I think they're probably more concerned about having it be a top lane pick than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it's still fine in mid. I think it's just like, as I said, it's literally an unintended lane strength. It's not supposed to be. This is how mid Aatrox works.
Yeah.
Is that you go and get it every time. Like, so I'm okay with it. Just if it makes him less strong, he becomes too weak as a result, then he'll get buffed.
Yeah. So Akali, W duration decrease. That's the Twilight Shroud. That's her obscurity ability.
Mm-hmm.
And they have reduced it by 1 second overall, and then the max duration extension has been reduced from 3 seconds to 2 seconds.
So this basically means that you're looking at her being in the shroud for 2 seconds less in general, which is pretty reasonable. You mentioned before yourself, like there's very little counterplay to her, so this means it's much more viable to actually wait out the shroud, particularly in the later game, because it scales, the level scales with duration. But I guess I would assume, and I'll have a quick check on this, but I would think it's almost a certainty that she doesn't level it with any kind of priority.
It's probably her third ability to level. But talking about how frustrating she can be to play against, right? I have a hard time understanding why Riot still has obscurity in the game, because they reworked the whole like Twilight system or Shadow system or whatever, and they put in a true shadow, true whatever
invisibility, yeah,
true invisibility, right? So
stealth.
Well, I don't understand why she doesn't just have that, right?
I honestly don't know. Like, I think it's because Riot have struggled with how to deal with stealth and visibility champions for a while, and I think it's them just trying out a new idea and saying, is this as broken as it sounds like it is? And I think it's not probably as offensive as it might have initially appeared on paper, but it's still pretty obnoxious.
And the problem just is that there's no counterplay to it, because the only like real counterplay there is to Akali's obscurity is to, well, kill her.
Well, as well, when Foxdrop was talking about that, he was thinking that the real problem for Akali was her crazy healing of her 5-point strike, especially when you combine that with a Hextech Gunblade. Like, you're talking about killing her. She didn't have Twilight Shroud. She can get her energy back, get a 5-point strike out, and she's more or less, healed that most of her health just off of that. So, even if you do wait her out, there isn't a outcome situation that really works out super well for you unless your team has got a lot of AoE.
Yeah, I completely agree with the 5-point strike point. Yeah, well, I don't think I have much more to add to Akali.
Yep.
Though I don't think this is the way to nerf her properly. I think it should be the 5-point strike.
I mean, I feel like the Akali nerf is a start.
Yeah, I don't think her ult really is a big problem. Neither her E, but definitely the W and the Q.
I think her ult is a bit boring, but
it's a bit boring, but I don't think it's overpowered anymore.
No, I mean I kind of feel like it's hard for that to be overpowered because it's just so straightforward.
Well, let's move to Camille. Attack speed has been decreased, so now from .644 to .625. That's gonna slow her down in the early game. She still has all of her strength, right? About being able to gank in unorthodox ways. How she has a lot of AoE damage, but just her overall attack speed is lowered.
So this is one of the things where I was like, I can say something that will be really obvious to. I don't even know what proportion of people it will be really obvious to, but I think until I kind of thought about it, I never kind of really kind of clocked this is why this is an important nerf for a jungler. It's because you last hit in lane, you don't last hit in the jungle, you just hit people all the time.
Yeah.
So, in this case, it's going to affect the jungler much more than it would the lane. Even with the precision protocol, her Q, her attacks reset, which I feel like probably mitigates that a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have no conception of how much of a nerf this is. Just that it is a nerf. Apparently, they consider it to be enough for one.
Yeah. Well, one thing you can also always say about the jungle is that people, they use their auto attacks in the jungle to hit a camp, hit a camp. So they're always trying to orb walk, right, in the jungle. So with them now nerfing this attack speed on Camille, it's going to be a bit harder to orb walk. Not a lot, but true. Definitely a bit.
Sure.
Yeah, well, let's move to Galio then. Q cost decreased, wind blast damage increased, tornado flat damage removed, but max health damage increased. E is faster but deals less damage to non-champions. R no longer grants damage reduction or longer knock up versus enemies in the center. So that was a big pile of stuff. Counterfeit, what do you find the most interesting about Galio?
Well, the hero's entrance is going to be the big story here, even though it's right at the end of the notes. So it doesn't act as a mini Shen ult anymore because it doesn't have damage reduction, and it also has less knock-up across the board. So that's a lot worse, like, immediately. I mean, from what I've been hearing from the different people talking about this, that he's much, much better in competitive than he would be in solo queue. So, like, I feel like these are nerfs probably directed towards that. But, yeah, like, there's... To look back for the other stuff as well, so Justice Punch, it comes out a bit quicker, but less wave clear specifically. And Winds of War, Freak ran the numbers on Winds of War. You would need to be packing a lot of AP to get back to the same damage you were before, because there's a lot of numbers being moved around there. But ultimately, it comes down to being just. He's nerfed it in nearly every respect.
Yeah. And, like, he's never been a big solo queue champion, right? He's always been that competitive champion where he works really well because he's able to bring so much utility to the table. And now that's going to be much harder. I definitely, like you mentioned it, Hero's Entrance is that big story. I never thought about the damage reduction being that big thing. But I always thought about the knock-ups being the major part of that ult, because it just meant that he would be able to disturb anyone who is going for a kill onto his, let's say his AD carry in the bottom side, right? So now he's not going to be disrupting any fights anymore.
Let me have a quick check and see what the actual numbers are. But yeah, I mean, well, that's the thing. I kind of feel like that's one of the reasons why I'm quite glad to see that part of Galio's ultimate taken away, is because it really wasn't very obvious when the Hero's Entrance was blocking damage, because it's like 20% damage reduction straight is pretty big.
It lacked the visual like cue like you have on the Shen ult, right?
Yeah, it needed to have some sort of shield or something around it. I'd much rather have the Hero's Entrance, like in that instance, give people a small shield, just because then you knew what was going on. Let's see. So it used to be... Oh, actually, they have to look through the history.
But actually, just like having 20 damage reduction from the start is still quite a lot, considering that that's level 6. And at level 6, you don't have any items yet, unless you're very fat.
Okay. So yeah, if you're in the middle of the impact zone, it was a 1.25 second knockup, whereas now it's 0.75 for everybody. So half a second extra. And for exactly what you're talking about, for when someone's diving on your champion, on one of your allied champions, and that's the one you're ulting onto to save them, half a second more or less, rather, of them being disabled, the person attacking your friend. Yeah, it's so a lot less wave clear, entrance a lot worse.
And Justice Punch is a lot worse as well. So
well, yeah, but I mean that falls into the wave clear part.
Yeah, well, he's more of an... Well, I wouldn't call him a niche champion now, but definitely less strong and more of a like Lulu mid lane nowadays than what he was before.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the idea being that if his wave clear is worse, he can't even get out of lane to use the Hero's Entrance as much as he might have otherwise. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's because it's just numbers, and the function. The only thing that's really changed functionality wise is his ultimate. Like, he might still be really good.
Yeah.
But just not as much.
Well, definitely toned down. Heimerdinger, slide, buff, bug fixes, and tooltip fixes. Do you have anything to add to this?
I did a little bit of checking into it. So the whole thing about the turret beam attack cooldown now actually scales with cooldown reduction. I don't play a lot of Heimerdinger myself, but from just checking into it, so this is also going to be really obvious to anybody who does, but just for people who don't. So his turrets have got a laser that gets charged up over time.
Yeah.
And now if you've got 40% cooldown reduction, instead of it taking... Actually, they're around a bit. So, Daedalus, you've got a turret, you've got like a charge up thing. You'd think it would take, like maybe 20 seconds to charge up?
Yeah.
You would be wrong, sir. You'd be so wrong. It takes 90 seconds. It basically takes so long to charge up, it may as well not have a charge up.
Yeah.
Instead, if you've got 40% cooldown, now it charges up in 54 seconds, which is still a ludicrously long time. And I feel like it's almost irrelevant. The way that Heimerdinger works with turrets is if he hits you with a rocket, it knocks off a fifth of the cooldown, because he's got 5 rockets he can potentially hit with 5. And if he hits you with a grenade, it just gets back all that cooldown immediately. So I don't think this does nearly anything, this cooldown beam thing, just because the only time your turrets actually go off is when you hit someone with an ability. Otherwise, I couldn't work out the exact numbers, but the chances of you hitting someone with, say, 4 rockets and this cooldown reduction allowing the laser to then go off, I think is extremely unlikely. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I just don't think it matters. But I could be, I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think it does.
Yeah. Well, also looking like at the stats on his upgraded W Hextech Rocket Swarm, like all the numbers are what is like streamlined now.
Well, I think it's more rewarding to hit people with more rockets.
Oh yeah, it definitely is. But like if you're looking at missile 2, 3, 4, 5 damage, it's 6 to 20 damage. It went from 16.8, 23.4, and 29.4 to 16, 22.5, and 29. So
that's true.
Makes more sense now, and like it's not so many odd numbers anymore.
Yeah. I guess so for the first, I think it's like if you hit them with the first one, it's the same. Mm-hmm. If you hit them with up to the first 5 ones, you get more, and it's slightly less for 6 to 20. So most of the time, you're not going to hit them with a full barrage, and if you did, they would be dead anyway.
Yeah.
But you're right. There's probably some number cleanup as well, because those are some really wacky numbers on missiles 6 to 20.
Oh, you never seen someone get hit by 16.8 health?
I mean, I've always been waiting for that moment to arrive.
Anyways, Ilaoi. E cooldown decreased, R cooldown decreased late. So we haven't seen Akali in a long time, but she definitely needed some buffs. I think her biggest problem is that she's either very, very strong, just because she's so so brutish. She has a lot of health and a lot of damage in her kit. So it's very hard to buff her. And once they changed her, what's it called, like the spirit or whatever, the W, there's the fragment of your soul that follows you.
Oh, the idol smash or whatever it's called.
Yeah. Once that got changed, I think that butchered her a bit, or at least put her down.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, it's called Harsh Lesson. I feel like she's one of the champions who has very poor ability names.
Well, you never see her being played, so you don't remember her name.
Yeah, I mean, well, as far as how this affects her, as Skara has been saying, like, you notice that her cooldowns go down a lot at the 1st, 3rd, and 5th level, so that's where you'd be able to level your E, and most people do power level the E.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of, once you get beyond that, it kind of goes down to almost the same cooldown as it was before anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So this is aimed at her pre-6 laning, and I guess it makes it better. I hate the ability test of Spirit. It's such an obnoxious ability to deal with. Like, either you get punished in one fashion, or you have to play an extremely boring and annoying minigame to get away from her tentacles afterwards. I hate it. I hate it so much. But
do you hate to play against it, or hate to shoutcast it?
I mean, people don't play it enough for me to really be bored with shoutcasting it. It just feels awful to play against.
Mm.
But I mean, she's definitely gonna be a lot better in the early levels. I don't know if that's where she needed to be stronger, but she certainly will be. And they've knocked a lot off her alt cooldown as well.
Yeah. I think it's fine to actually make her stronger in the early game, because for me it feels like if she's not able to get out of the laning phase somewhat ahead, then she's not going to be that split pushing menace that she's supposed to be, right? So now giving her more of, or well, lower cooldown actually on Test of Spirit means that she's going to have an easier time poking people. Obviously, it's a less interactive time, but it is nonetheless an easier time controlling her lane. And then Leap of Fate, with that going down in cooldown in in second level and the third level, means that she will have that up more once you get into that team fighting, split pushing scenario.
Yeah, I mean, so we've got buffs to her very early game and buffs to her very late game. Because, I think you don't really start to feel like cooldown once you hit level 16 and you're getting a good 20 seconds off of it. And if you're stacking up to 40% cooldown CDR, you're looking at a 40-second ultimate at that point, which is pretty good in terms of, because it's such an easy. Well, assuming your team can't hold the opposing team in place, which is the big problem with Leap of Faith in the first place, which is also an awful ability name. But anyway, no one cares about that.
Yeah.
But if you can hold them in place, this makes it a lot less punishing if the enemy team, if they spend resources to get away from your ultimate, because they probably should, because they'll die if they don't. You then have it up for the next team fight. So, I guess that's a pretty good feeling.
Yeah. Well, Aurelia. W cooldown increased early, damage reduction reduced, no longer grants passive stack on cast. So that's the defined dance. That's the one where she roots herself in place, then lashes out with her blades, and she also has damage reduction during that period of time.
Yeah, there's a pattern that you'll notice in this one. If someone's cooldowns are being affected, they'll be affected by 4 seconds. So multiple streamers pointed that out. It does seem to be, we'll come across this with LeBlanc as well. They just literally stick 4 seconds on her cooldowns and call it a day. I think someone must have just had the idea that that was the way to nerf things, and I guess it works. Like, it's more of a window of opportunity to go after her. Like, if you can make her use her Defiant Dance, then you've got, that's a much bigger window of opportunity, because people don't level it. So you're not going to get it down to 12 seconds anytime soon. And I don't know, I don't play a lot of Aurelia to know for certain, but not getting her the first stack of Ionian further, I would imagine is important for being able to get up to full stacks for her, just to make it a little bit easier.
It definitely forces her into longer fights, right? Because now she has to stack them by hitting enemies with her auto attacks. But I think you hit the nail on the head by saying that now, with the cooldown being higher, it leaves open a window of opportunity for her enemies to actually punish her. Also, with the damage reduction, people can... Well, they're still going to have a hard time dealing damage to her, because still, 40%? But now they can deal a bit more.
Yeah, I think that's... I almost feel like maybe the ability needs to be changed a little bit, just in terms of how... you play against it enough times, it almost becomes like a Zonya's in terms of people just don't attack her during that point because it doesn't feel like it's remotely rewarding.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe you should be able to make an actual decision there, in terms of she's got a certain amount of damage that she can soak, rather than just being she's basically invincible for most intents and purposes.
Okay. Well, Jax are on hit base damage reduced late, so. That's the Grandmaster Might, where the third attack on hit deals a bunch of damage, and now that's been lowered by 20 on the second. Well, once you level it up to the second level, there are, and then 40 on the third level. Meaning that he is weaker in the late game, where Jax has always been shining. Now he's less of a grand duelist, and will have a harder time in those trades. But I don't think it's not going to make the biggest of differences, right? Obviously it's going to tone him down to the damage he can output, but you still have the Triforce and the Ravenous Hydra or Titanic Hydra, depending on what you want to go for. So you still pack a lot of damage just from your items.
Oh yeah, you're absolutely right. It's usually Riot's way to nerf the early game and buff the late, because exactly as you're saying, the numbers in the late game just don't matter as much as they do early on. Because yeah, like the Grandmaster's Might damage is a much larger proportion of Jax's overall damage, like at level 6, than it will be at level 16 when you get over to the final form of it. I mean, I think you're losing more damage than maybe is apparent just if you go for something really aggressive like a Gwynsu's, and you're missing out on then 80 damage.
But you know what? I think the mid game, your second level in your Grandmaster's Might makes a big difference, because you're still scaling up at that point. You have maybe 2 items at that point, maybe 3, maybe 1, depending on how far or behind you are. So losing 20 definitely makes a bigger difference in the mid game than losing 40 in the late game, where you're gonna have 45 items anyway.
Yeah. No. The only caveat to this is that there are some changes to Death's Dance later on in the patch, which will somewhat. I don't know if Jax would necessarily want to build it, but if they did, then it becomes relevant. But we'll get into that once we get to Death's Dance.
Yeah, well, let's jump to LeBlanc then. So, that's her W cooldown increased early. You were talking about that, Counterfeit. Do you want to continue talking about it?
Well, again, LeBlanc, not a champion I play an enormous amount of myself. I'm just having a quick check to see if, let's see. That's right, they reverted it, didn't they? I have trouble keeping up with LeBlanc's various different incarnations, but I know certainly back in the day, Distortion was considered to be her wave clear.
It was, yeah.
And for a while, the Sigil of Malice kind of took that over. And we're now back at the point where, sorry, I probably should know this immediately, but the Sigil of Malice no longer does that. So, yeah, this hits her safety, this hits her wave clear. And exactly like the Red, as they say in the notes just above it, this gives her more windows of vulnerability, especially if she needs to clear that mid wave quickly for whatever reason, then suddenly she's given up a lot more than she would have had to otherwise.
Yeah. And it tones down her ability to get a gank from a jungler, so not a bad nerf at all, I think. Without saying that I've seen that much LeBlanc, she's always a pick you can come out with, and there should be a downtime when you use that distortion. There should be something that punishes you, right?
Yep, for sure.
Okay, well, Victor, Q's base damage decreased, cooldown increased, E ratio increased, and cooldown decreased. You know what, Counterfeit? I have an article coming out soon with Victor.
What?
I do, and let me tell you, Siphon Power is absolutely busted. So I like these changes. Siphon Power, it got changed back in patch, I want to say patch 8.19 or patch 8.11. It got changed so that it deals more damage, and it has a higher ratio. And I think that was a huge reason why he got up to the top side, because you could then abuse the Kleptomancy while still having the shield from your augmented Siphon Power. I like to see now it being toned down a bit. The missile base damage, if I remember correctly, was a part of what got buffed on Victor as well. But I think that while the damage isn't the biggest problem, it's definitely the low cooldown, which it had. Now having, let's say, you would have 6 seconds on its third level, right? And you would have some cooldown anyway, because as a top lane Victor, you're going for Sheen as your first item, right? So putting more of a cooldown on that Siphon Power makes it harder for a Victor in the top side to take over that lane.
Yeah, I mean, and they're putting some of that back into the death ray. Certainly seems like it's encouraging him back into the bottom side, also with a slightly better AP ratio. You're right, it was 8.11. They put the discharge base damage up very slightly.
It wasn't a lot, but still in conjunction with Kleptomancy and Sheen, it just made it a very strong item, strong combo against tanks in the top side who really can't fight back.
They keep putting more AP ratios on him. Looking at his patch history, like nearly every time he comes up in the patch. Well, I'd say this, frequently when he comes up in the patch, his AP ratios.
His Chaos Storm got buffed in one patch, right?
Yes. So in 8.22, the same one where where he actually got the discharge reduced slightly, they gave more AP ratio across his Chaos Storm. So it's possible if nobody was been playing him in the mid lane and they keep buffing his mid lane to try and get people to do it, that he might be really overpowered in the mid lane, but just no one's playing him as yet because it's just better to play him in the top lane.
Yeah. But now the Kleptomancy changes in the preseason patch made it harder for the Kleptomancy to be used in topside by Victor. At least I would assume so. I haven't exactly had the time to test out that the Kleptomancy, but now that you have to hit 2 auto attacks instead of 1, it does mean that you are vulnerable for a longer time. And I say vulnerable with a quote unquote, because it still depends on who you're fighting against. If let's say you're fighting against a Maokai in the top side as a Victor, you're gonna shit on him, if we can use that kind of word here, because Maokai is not going to be able to fight back against you, and then hitting 2 auto attacks as a Victor should not be a problem at all.
Yeah, I mean, putting aside the fact you just taught me bad language, Jesper.
I'm sorry.
I mean, you've got the empowered auto attack after using your power transfer, sorry. So, I mean, I guess it's, and with the fact you've also got a shield immediately afterwards as well.
But you also get movement speed.
Yeah, but, I'm not sure getting 2 auto attacks off is going to be a major issue for Victor in the top lane, just because he's got the window of safety to trade anyway.
Exactly. It only depends on who you're fighting against.
Yeah.
Alright, well, skill shot targeting with Flash, do you have anything to add to that, or the clone debuff visuals?
Not only that this was bugs stuff rather than anything that's really being changed, so people might need to relearn some of this stuff, but yeah, not too much to say about that.
Well, let's jump to items then. So, Death Stance, you mentioned that. You go, Mr. Counterfeit.
Yes, so there's all of the other stuff, doesn't really matter. So the big thing which I was alluding to before was that Death Stance now works off AP as well. AP and true damage as well as AD, which is a more significant change than it would appear. I'm not 100% certain as to all of the sort of outcomes here, but you mentioned Jax before. Jax, his ultimate as Grandmaster's Might is magic damage.
So Jax kill?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know. It's 5% for AoE, so maybe not so much for Kale. But as to who can really abuse this, I'm not certain. I mean, Sin was saying on Twitter he thinks that this is a very good replacement for Black Cleaver for a lot of people, but I don't know, I'm trying to think of someone outside of Cho'Gath who has a large quantity of true damage that would really be noticeable. I don't know, man. I can't think of offhand, but there's some interesting possibilities here, and I think you can combo it together with Hex Tech Gunblade now to be able to get some pretty gross healing going on.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, I think a lot of the old style hybrid champions or even split pushers could definitely use this. I don't know. Fiora probably has some magic damage in her kit. Irelia as well. Tryndamere has some magic damage in his kit. Magic damage on his the spinning blade or whatever it's called, right?
I think it might have AP scaling. I don't think it does magic damage.
You don't think so?
I don't think so, but I mean, I'm more than happy to be told wrong on that one. I'd be surprised.
Let me OPGD him. Let's see. Okay, so his spinning slash, that's physical damage, yeah.
It does have AP scaling for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know why it has AP scaling, honestly. I think the only outcome to it having AP scaling is bad ones.
Well, let's look at some other picks then, because you have let's say Fiora. Did she have any Did she have any magic damage?
I'd be very surprised.
Her riposte has.
Really?
Yeah.
But that's not a major damage source for her, though, is it?
No, it is not. Okay,
I don't know.
so
I think we'd have to do some more research. I don't think we're going to find anyone who's got major magic damage because most people don't mix damage unless it's on a utility ability like the riposte.
well, Renekton has magic damage on his ult.
Yeah, I mean, I guess yeah, he might be a case for
Okay,
it.
well, I know who can use it. Nasus.
Yeah, sure.
If you wanted to, of course, but we'll have to wait and see who actually uses Death Dance. Can you see that on OPGG? You can see items, right? No?
Don't know.
Oh well, never mind. But yeah, definitely can be good for someone like Akali, who can use it with Hextech Gunblade, as you said, or Jax. But Eye of the Hilt can no longer be activated during combat with non-minions.
It's literally a quality of life improvement. It just means you basically you don't accidentally activate it when you didn't mean to.
Yeah.
So that's good.
In the jungle, at least. Runes. So Dark Harvest. Base damage decreased, can't proc of other procs. Dark Harvest has been a absolutely ridiculous keystone. I don't know if you saw it, Peter, but at the Red Bull Ultimania I did last weekend, we had a Karthus who went into the mid lane with a Runic Echoes because that was his item package, and he got very far ahead. He had the Dark Harvest, and it took him, I think it took him one ult and one skittle to kill a Lucian, and they were at the same level, around like level 16, I think.
Yeah, it's been problematic. I feel like, I mean, Scar has been talking about this at length, but it does feel like it's a mistake, like on the Riot's part, this whole thing, because of how harshly they've nerfed Dark Harvest. It feels like they're almost in the position of nerfing it into the point of being almost useless on most champions, to maybe just stop people using it so they can rethink what it is they're trying to do with it. But because it's it's being used on like everybody, or at least was being used on everybody. And I think the particularly good point that was made was that it was much better on poke mages who could reliably get off the Dark Harvest stuff than anybody else. And yeah, it just doesn't seem to be doing what it's supposed to be doing.
It's also just the fact that the cooldown on you harvesting souls is, I feel like, extremely low. It's 45 seconds, and you get 5 damage per soul. Like, either you have to nerf the cooldown or you have to nerf the damage per soul, because 5 damage per soul is a lot.
Well, that's what I mean with the poke mages, though. It's like, because they would consistently be poking at people, so they'll get them down to about half health and keep them roughly there, so they can keep getting off without really taking any kind of risk. Whereas, I think for a lot of, like, for other champions, it's much harder, because if you're in a lane and you can't poke the person, then you're not doing. They never go below 50% health unless you're trading pretty heavily. But even to step away from like the specifics of it, the changes are a little bit hard to pass on first look. So there's a lot less base damage, like literally halved at early levels. So that's a fairly big deal. So it pushes it more towards being a scaling ability. It's also not being able to proc off other procs is rather confusing. So what it's saying there is that any ability that you use on someone, like a toxic shot, like so a dot, still works. But stuff that you get from other things, which reacts off of you doing damage, so Liandry's Torment, Scorch, etc.
Except for Dune's Echo for some reason.
Yes, which is coded as a minion or something.
Yeah.
So
coded as pasta.
Yeah, like for the most part, it's a lot harder to set it off, and I think also, was this part of this patch? I can't remember. I think it's much harder to get. There'll be like tail end, Dark Harvesting. It's like you'll trade with someone and they'll just drop below 50%, and then you'll get it with some kind of extra thing. Like Leandries, I think would make it a lot easier because you're getting just occasional accidental Dark Harvest stacks. So I think this will make it a lot less good.
Well, just hitting on the base damage makes it very less good if you were to use your words, right? Because 20 damage at level 1, and I know it's going to scale, right? But 20 damage at level 1 is not a lot.
No,
it really relies on you being able to control your lane, like a Pantheon, or a Zoe, or someone who can just take you down to that below that 50% threshold.
It's worth noting as well, which is something that's quite easy to miss, is it does like the Dark Harvest in of itself, because it's got AD scaling and it's got AP scaling. It also provides another outlet for people who build a lot of either of those things. So, for example, Veigar, has a badillion AP, so he doesn't even need to have. Honestly, because the scaling doesn't scale with stacks. It's just you get 5 straight more damage per soul, which I feel like in of itself is kind of wonky in that it's exactly as rewarding to get a Dark Harvest, or to stack up from 1 to 2 and from 99 to 100. In terms of how much more damage you're getting, you're definitely doing more damage, of course, with the proc itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It feels like it's a huge mess. Apparently, Foxtrot was saying that there are some potential avenues of further nerfing they're going to go for with this one, which is either making it harder to set off by having it proc on 40% or below champions, or having a. You talked about the reset being very. Oh well, sorry, the time between
the cooldown.
Yeah, the cooldown being 45 seconds. You're talking about. It feels like the rune gets really crazy when you can reset it. So currently it's at 1.5 seconds for a reset, which means it's pretty straightforward to get it off multiple times during a team fight. And I think the maths is that you have 20 stacks of Dark Harvest to hit the same damage as Electrocute at this sort of equivalent point. But if you can get it off multiple times, then it becomes vastly better.
Yeah, well, I definitely think it needs to be nerfed more, but the problem is just when have you nerfed it enough? Yeah. Because you don't want to completely butcher the Keystone.
I think they do.
Yeah, well, they want to, right? Or at least they're on the path to doing so, but it just feels bad because the entire idea about this rune system is that you want to have multiple keystones that can't be used as alternatives, and if they're going to nerf all of the keystones to the ground, well, then there are going to be keystones popping up that, well, simply are better than others. That's what you're seeing with Electrocute. That got nerfed, so now Dark Harvest is better, even though it's actually a riskier keystone. At least up until the point that they've completely nerfed it to the ground.
Yeah, I generally don't even think it might not even be that good on that many champions at the moment, but I think people are using it because it's the flavor of the month. I don't know.
Again, it's good on champions where you can poke them down to that point where you're under 50% health, right? That's the only champions that it's really good at, or good on actually. Well,
so yeah, I guess Dark Harvest will probably get more. I think it's probably not worth taking on everybody at the moment, and it's also probably going to get nerfed further.
It's going to get dark. It's going to go down. It's going to have its lights closed on it.
I hope maybe they'll, as much as it's already an overcomplicated rune, I kind of hope they put in some sort of scaling on the bonus ratios or something.
So or how that? How are you thinking?
Well, in terms of the current ratio, so it's got 25% bonus AD and 15% AP.
Yeah.
If they had that scale per level or per amount of souls you've gotten, then I think that might force it more down the path of being a scaling thing. So it's while you can, I can't remember. I don't think I talked to you about this before. But I kind of feel like if you build in a base amount of damage for an ability, you have a worst case scenario. So it's always going to do this much damage. But you've also built in an incentive for people to play it as it's intended, which is the scaling. So the I don't know if I talked to you about this specifically, but with Aftershock, that's a problematic keystone because it just gives you a straight amount of resistances.
Yeah,
it shouldn't do that. It should give you some resistances, but it should also have a component that encourages you to use it for what it's intended for, which is a tank mastery. So say you get half those stats, which you do at the moment, and then the other half go into percentage scaling based on how much health or how much armor and magic resist you have to make sure that it's being used in the way that's intended. So in this case, like, this is supposed to be a scaling keystone, so it feels like more of its potential should be locked behind scaling and not just kind of like, in this case, like, literally you could be a Vhagar with one stack of this and you would still have another outlet for which you'd be getting 50% AP.
Yeah, well, that's actually a really good point you're coming in with, Counterfeit, and I think that would be a delicate way of changing Dark Harvest. Also, then it wouldn't be a problem with you having such a high cooldown and the threshold of 50% max health, because if you still have those two in place, then it's not a problem with you getting those stacks in the early game, because it is scaling, right?
Yeah.
Well, it is a scaling keystone, so I think that would be a very good way of changing Dark Harvest.
Yeah, I hope they try and come up with solutions for it rather than just dumpster it and then delete it from the game effectively.
Yeah. Well, you want to jump to the jungle, or do you have more to add to Dark Harvest?
I mean, that's probably the most complicated thing in the patch, so at least that's happening.
Well, I think we spent what, like a good 10 minutes talking about that, so, and we got to some good points, Counterfeit. So bravo you.
Bravo you as well, sir.
Thank you, good man. My favorite man.
When we leave the EU, I'll miss you.
You're the best man. Anyways, Merkwolf and you don't know what I'm doing because you can't see it, but I'm blinking to you.
Okay, no, I figured it out from the noises you were making. Honestly.
Anyways, Merkwolf and Raptor spawn time. I don't know why the hell the first Merkwolf spawned at 129 and the first Raptor spawned at 128.
I mean, this is going back to the Aatrox nerf. So Aatrox is not the only mid laner who's going through and stealing camps. So this is it's a nerf to him, and it's a nerf to anybody else who would think of doing such a thing. If you do this, that you're gonna potentially lose out on a CS, making it a lot less appealing. And also, as they say in the notes, that it opens up more of a window opportunity for other people to come up and be like, "You're on low health doing this, or at least you're occupied. If you get found while doing it, you're in a lot of trouble." Yeah.
Well, when does the minions get to lane the mid lane? Is that at 130?
I think it is. I'd have to. I don't know offhand, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it's probably okay. So minions spawn at 30 seconds into the game, right? No, I'm a liar. It's 1 minute into the game.
Let's see. Gosh, that's the problem with asking questions you're not certain about the answers to, because then I wouldn't know offhand, which is terrible.
Well, we're both terrible.
Yeah, we're the best.
Yeah, well, you're the worst. And I'm worse.
I'll make a movie about it.
Hey, okay. Spawning location?
Let's not get too hung up on it.
No, I want to know. Okay, they spawn at, okay, so let's say melee minions and caster minions. They spawn at 105.
Yeah, they would take a certain amount of time to get. I think it's 25 seconds to get down to the mid lane, so they would be arriving at the same time.
Yeah.
So you would almost certainly, if not lose, well, I guess you run into a couple of scenarios there. You
would lose agency in the mid lane.
Yeah. No, that's a good way of putting it. Because the other person might decide to shove out the mid lane, and then get a guaranteed level 2 before you.
Yeah. So a fine change, I guess. Again, it's a bit of a streamlining for junglers, but does also open up for, as you said, to make junglers more vulnerable to interference from the enemy jungler.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, actually, sorry, saying that, I think it might still be worthwhile, because presumably you're getting level 2 off of going after a Merkwolf or Raptor camp. So
you have to clear it out entirely, right? That's going to be hard.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, you probably aren't clearing it entirely. You're probably just taking a couple of them.
Yeah, you're taking the first one, I would assume.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'd have to consult people who knew a bit more about this particular strategy.
Would have to research it a bit, but I think you don't get enough experience off of like one to get it. But it's just that since you're not doing anything else in the mid lane, it just makes sense for you to go for a simple camp before you get to lane.
Yeah, I think I've suddenly drawn to mind, and I could be completely wrong about this, so please feel free to correct me in the comments if I am. But I think if you get like one minion, then it gives you the slight level advantage. I'm not sure exactly. I probably shouldn't be talking about it because I don't really understand myself.
Alright, well, nonetheless, we can agree on it being a change that forces mid laners to go into the mid lane and grab their minions instead of stealing, quote unquote, camps away from the jungler.
Yeah, I mean the important part basically being that Riot don't want. Yeah, there's certain strategies Riot don't want to see become prevalent, and they will do their best to make sure that they do not.
Yeah. So Nexus splits. Do you have anything to say about that?
I'm glad to see that it's back again. I'm hoping that Riot really put the effort in to make it a very fun mode, because I think it's very smart to have a version of League of Legends that is strictly 15 minutes. Because it's already, I find, when it was here last time, I found it much easier to fit into my schedule to be like, I know this will be done in 15 minutes. So, like, that's a huge improvement, like, you know, approximately a third of a League of Legends game. You never know exactly how long you're getting either.
Yeah, I've never played Nexus Splits, so...
You should. It's genuinely, as much as it's, like, a bit of a meme, it is one of the avenues of the future of League of Legends. So, it's worth having played it. Play it with people though, because it's a goofy game. I think it's much better with friends.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about it for this video, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's a few other bits and pieces, but nothing very important.
Yeah, well, it's like you have hotkeys for champions with additional buttons.
Yeah, quality of life doesn't matter.
Yeah, and then non-summoner rift modes, but that was basically just because the new bounty system broke the old bounty system on maps. And then you have ranked. And I don't.
Well, I mean, I know probably neither of us have ever played ranked game in our lives, but yeah, I mean, I feel like it's probably a net improvement. So
yeah,
I'm into it. Like the placement stuff sounds a lot more forgiving than it once was. I think that's a smart move on their part to make it less negative than it would have been otherwise. So yeah, I think the fact that League of Legends is feeling the pressure from other games is forcing them to push the boat out a bit more and not just rest on their laurels as has been the case for a long time.
Make more quality changes, right?
Yeah, I try and push any game studio I'm working with to put quality of life stuff in, because it's so underestimated by so many game studios, because they're used to it, and people also are used to it. But it's not like they like it, it's just that they don't think it's ever going to change. So they just stop complaining about it because, you know. But quality of life stuff is, oh man, it's so good. League of Legends is only very historically recently starting putting in quality of life improvements, and it just makes.
And it's crazy considering that we're in like the 8th year of League of Legends.
Yeah, no, it's because they didn't need to.
Yeah.
Like for the same reason that, you know, organizations we both work with, like, you know, have had started to gain more competition, and it gets people to do more. I think like having competition is very, very good for League of Legends. It's very good for organizations as well, to force them to try harder, because if you don't, then you'll get overtaken. And I think League of Legends will probably have to accept itself as a kind of just part of the esports pantheon from here on out. But if it gets them to actually put more effort into making the game more pleasant to play, then I think that's worked out pretty well.
Yeah. And with that being said, I think we're about to round out this video. So, Counterfeit, you want to shout out yourself?
Yeah, you can find me at Counterfeit Cast on Twitter. But yeah,
on Instagram as well, where he posts a lot of cat videos and cat pictures.
I would, but my those cats have had to find another home. So I feel really bad whenever anyone looks on my Instagram for cat pictures, and there are some cat pictures on there, but there will not be any more for the time being. I've recently, I think you can find me on YouTube somewhere or other. I don't think I've got a very locatable channel.
You also have a Facebook.
Yeah. But yeah, Peter, Counterfeit, Hartnell, Shoutcaster.
Yeah, I think that's the name.
If you look for it, you'll probably find him.
Yeah. Well, you can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Medium as well. I've started writing a lot of articles recently. Just search for Daedalus, and you can more or less always find me.
Are you sure just Daedalus? Because that's quite broad.
No, I think on Twitter it's Daedalus Cast. On Facebook it's probably Daedalus Cast as well. I can't remember. I think it's Daedalus on Medium actually.
That sounds so unlikely. But the reason I'm kind of harping on this, and I'm going to search for Daedalus on there. Yeah, there's loads of people called Daedalus.
Try Daedalus Cast then.
Let's have a look. Does that work?
Then you'll probably find me. Are you looking on Medium?
Yeah.
I think you'll find me if you go Daedalus Casts.
Yeah. So yeah, search Daedalus Casts. The reason I'm kind of trying to clarify that is because I think you had some quite good reception to your articles, so it would be nice for more people to see them.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
That's medium.com/@DaedalusCasts.
Yeah. And now with this is a very bad heart. You can't see it, but I'm making a heart with my fingers. Yeah, that looks like an apple.
Yeah,
anyways, I think we need to round out this video because we're getting off track. So thank you guys for watching. Obviously, find us on social medias, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.